Hello, everyone, and welcome to Informed Dissent. This is your news of the week for the week of February 14th, 2026. In British Columbia, a school shooting left 10 people dead. Early reporting described the suspect as a female in a dress. The family later confirmed the shooter was a trans-identified male. Some outlets updated the reporting to explicitly note that the suspect was born male. Others continued using female pronouns in headlines or earlier paragraphs, with references to sex appearing later in the articles. In California, a San Diego judge ordered Rady Children's Hospital to continue pediatric gender medical interventions for now, after Attorney General Rob Bonta sued the hospital over its attempt to pause the interventions. The FDA sent warning letters to 12 companies marketing chest binders to minors, stating that binders qualify as medical devices and must comply with federal registration and labeling requirements. Another one out of California, male athlete A.B. Hernandez continues competing in girls' track events amid Title IX investigations and a pending lawsuit from teammates. At the Winter Olympics, headlines described Swedish skier Ellis Ludholm as the first openly transgender athlete. Ludholm is female and competing in the female category, albeit with a very short haircut. Legal disputes in the United States continue to focus on male eligibility in women's divisions. Those are the developments shaping this week's conversation. Our interview this week is with Dr. Patrick Hunter, a Florida-based pediatrician and member of the Florida Medical Board, who has participated in state policy discussions relating to care for gender dysphoria. That's your news of the week. And now, on to the show. Hello. Welcome to
Hello.
Informed Dissent.
Oh.
I am Lauren Legere, Executive Director of the LGB Carriage Coalition, with my co-hosts Corey Cohn and Jamie Reed, who will introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jamie Reed, whistleblower from a pediatric gender center. And Corey's already made fun of my hat this morning for reasons that I don't understand.
I'm Corey. I am a survivor of trans medicine. I don't like any of these introductions. And I make fun of people's hats, which is maybe hypocritical. Welcome to Informed Dissent, and we're glad to have you with us today.
What's on the agenda this week?
Well, there's a bunch of news that has been prepared for us by our wonderful production people. Shall I go through and pitch some topics and we'll talk about it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Actually, can I catch you off guard for a second?
Please try.
Okay. Last week, we covered a topic that was related to the $2 million
Yes.
settlement for a detransitioner. And Jamie's already sighing.
Yes.
What did we get wrong? Do we remember?
Yes, sorry, listeners. We did get some stuff wrong.
What did we get wrong? That W path was not the standard of care that was being critiqued in this lawsuit.
I think it was also the specifics that it was dysmorphia.
No, we said that.
We said that part. Okay. Maybe I'm going to pitch an idea here.
You going to pull up the comments?
I am. Maybe we should restart after giving the comments a quick perusal, because I think that they were fair.
Just do it live. Let's just do it live.
Just do it live in the good old spirit of live. Well, we're going to look for the word frustrating, because I think that's what people said. You guys got several very important details wrong that made this discussion quite frustrating to listen to. This is Jenna. Thank you, by the way. Really genuinely. And a lot of your points inapplicable. First, Jamie, you were incorrect when you said that WPATH SOC is what they were asking the jury to use as the standard of care. Ben Ryan, former guest, future guest as well, hopefully, explicitly reported that the standard was what a reasonable clinician would do in the situation,
This,
not WPATH SOC.
okay. If this is where I'm very, can I go ahead or do you want to keep reading this?
Let me get to the end of this here.
Okay, get to the end.
He reported that, in fact, the judge expressed frustration that WPATH had called their guidelines standards of care because it was confusing and not a legal standard of care. Please stop repeating the myths that WPATH SOC is determining the legal SOC.
Okay, but is that the end?
No, there's more, but I think that's the most substantive complaint. There's some nitpicks after that.
I am concerned that with what I'm about to say will somehow, I mean, it's not going to change the outcome of this court case. However, um, there's a big problem here. So
Yeah.
if it's not WPATH, and if it's what a quote reasonable provider in what? In this field would do? Is that what the judge was saying?
Well, the reasonability is a pretty important consideration in law generally, because a lot of the standards, whenever there's something that's not clearly outlined or written out by the law, I mean, that's why things tend to go to court and why you need witnesses and juries, is that you're asking people when the fact pattern is so complicated and there's so many factors to consider. Ultimately, what does our reason tell us? And if the idea here is that there's not really a standard of care to follow, but that we had to figure out what a reasonable person would do.
A reasonable person operating within a gender clinic would have done with this patient. Is that what the...
Yes.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and say something. Then these surgeons and therapists did exactly what, and if by reasonable we mean the vast majority of the other people operating in this field were doing at the same time.
Yeah.
They did they followed the standard of care.
Well, that is not what Erica Anderson or the
Okay, but
incoming
Erica Anderson
president
and Laura,
of WPATH.
right, because they live in La La Land where they want to make shit up and pretend like that is Erica and Laura
Wow.
want there to be some kind of care being provided that doesn't exist, but also at the same time, they know that it doesn't exist because that's exactly what their Washington Post article op-ed was saying from the start, which is everybody's acting recklessly.
Well, I think Lauren Schechter is the incoming president of WPATH, was also gave expert testimony in this case that we're talking about, the Fox Varian case. And it sounded, I haven't read the depositions yet, although very kindly, one of the our trans opposites, somebody who's on the other side, Julie Ray Goldstein, who's sort of is a gadfly who watches a lot of these detransitioner lawsuits, actually did download all the depositions before they were sealed again and made them available publicly. So I do have the depositions. I just I've gone through a couple, but not that much. At any rate, we have two experts in the field who said that in Fox Varian's case that the standard was not followed, that there wasn't reasonable application.
Okay, so this is where I think if I was not a clinical insider, and maybe part of the frustration is that I am very frustrated in some ways by the outcome of this case. I'm not frustrated that she won. Of course, I think she should have won, but I don't know how you, I'm concerned then how you move forward by saying that this clinician operated outside of whatever the reasonable standard of care is for the
Yeah.
field. Okay, so we can take this apart. Body dysmorphia, that wasn't a red flag to me. I know a couple people wrote in the comments, this was a huge red flag. Not a red flag to me at all. Why? Because 8 million people would call, patients would call, parents would call, parents in the clinic room. They use that phrase interchangeably with gender dysphoria all
Yeah.
the time to the point where I stopped trying to correct people.
Yeah. That used to be pretty common in the trans community also for
I
people to
mean,
use both of those terms. It used to be not even a matter of question or controversy.
not at all. So the fact that that was listed as the diagnosis in the
Yeah.
letter to me was actually not a problem because I've seen tons of letters like that. That wasn't an issue. Um, Again, the length of time, and this is interesting because Helen Lewis just published a piece in the Atlantic, and I was thinking about this case in our previous conversation, and she wrote in that piece, we need to pull this up and I need to pull it up directly. I believe she wrote that there was 11 months of identification, not of, that there was 11 months of therapy of trans identification, is what I'm trying to say. Um, did anybody else read that piece?
I've not read the Helen Lewis
Okay.
piece.
But so I guess my frustration or what I'm feeling about this is that like I guess that this worked out in this specific case, but if you are defining the standard of care not based on WPATH, based on what a reasonable clinician in this field would do, a reasonable clinician in this field would do exactly what that therapist did and exactly what that surgeon did. We never, I mean, I said this last week, we never called the therapist after they sent over a letter of support. And this is the other thing that I'm frustrated by just from the field in general is that my clinic was not some weird outlier. And I know that because I was working on a research project with the Stanford clinic, with the Vanderbilt clinic. Like we were all connected. Like that's how we all operated.
Right, but I think what's important to kind of suss out here is that the jury were just, these are regular people. These are not people with medical training. So I think what they heard, like what happened to this young woman, was unreasonable. And I think if we can get these cases in front of a jury, reasonable people are going to say, this is malpractice. They're not going to get bogged down by like what this standard says and what this standard says. They're going to say, well, no, reasonable people would say this is malpractice.
That you
Well,
can
I
go ahead, Corey.
I want to just be careful here because the the actions by the providers are what was judged, not what happened to her, but the care that the providers took in the actions that they performed. So I think you're right that this shocks the conscience and that juries will not be very warm and friendly to surgeons and therapists who lead children into harm. But one of the questions that you would have to be able to answer in the jury would be something like, did this doctor follow every reasonable step to make sure that this person was a good candidate for the surgery? Like, did they skip any steps? Did they forget to do things? Did they were there opportunities for them to communicate more risks or dangers and they chose not to? Those are all the sorts of care considerations, reason, like if you just put somebody directly from, I'm gonna shift the context a little bit. There's a project called Gallup, which is basically a surgery letter on demand. So I don't know if the Gallup project is still going. I kind of heard that
But
they've
Plume does the same thing. Folk does the
does
same
the
thing.
same thing.
Yeah.
So with it's just basically pretextual. There's no real basis of trying to find out whether there are other causes for somebody seeking these medical procedures. They'll just write a letter. So if you're a surgeon that accepts a letter like that, and you don't call the therapist and say, let's talk about this patient a little bit and make sure that I want to ask you some questions. I did an evaluation of the patient. I have some concerns. Let's have a quick conversation before I permanently carve into this person and change their body. If they just take the letter and they do the surgery, like it's some sort of Uber Eats, like click the
But
button and then. But that's what you're saying. That's what they do,
but that's what they do. So I
right?
guess this is the problem. Like, again, I don't want this case to be relitigated, but there is a problem here, I think, with cases moving forward because there's the La La Land where Erica and the WPATH guy is, and then there's the actual what is on the ground, the quote standard. And
Yeah,
so if we're judging this on what would the vast, if we're not judging it on WPATH and we're saying instead, what is the standard done by the vast majority of clinicians in this field? They are doing that. So either that means what I believe, which is that the entire field has gone completely off the rails and everybody being served right now is essentially being served. This is my belief, is being served
Harm.
harm.
yeah.
So
If we went back 20 years ago or 30 years ago, in my case, there were a lot more, we would have called it gatekeeping, but there was a lot more filtering that was done to slow a patient down and to create a roadmap of things that they would have to follow in order to even gain access to any of the medical procedures, including surgery. And over the course of 20, 25 years, all of those gatekeeping procedures have been eroded. But some of the people, probably Erica Anderson included, were practicing back in the days when there was a lot more filtering of these patients. And what you would have seen is you would not have ever seen anything like Fox Varian coming through the system because she would have been filtered out way before she ever saw a surgeon. Like she would
you
have
think even back in your frame, she would have been filtered out?
absolutely let me put it this way: the chances that she would have been filtered out would be way higher. So it's not a guarantee, but the chances that she would have been put on the slow road, or you have a number of outstanding mental issues that you're still managing. We think that you should wait until 18 for surgery because of that. Like that would have been way more common 25 years ago. And I think when you see experts like Erica Anderson come in, that's probably the main thing that they're saying is we have been at a point in this field before where we were concerned about the suitability of a patient to have these procedures. So we know from experience that we shouldn't be rushing people into these surgeries because the outcomes are not great.
What the hell are your cats
I'm
doing?
sorry, yes.
They're debating
Okay.
I'm running
aggressively.
the gauntlet.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I need a yeah, I
And
apologize.
and I
Well,
think
I know we all wanted these cases to be a searing indictment of the entire industry. I just legally it's just not going to work that way, so we need to take the wins where we get them. Jamie, I get your point that Yeah, the whole industry is bananas.
Yeah, I want to.
But I also firmly believe that the more cases get in front of juries like this, the more they're gonna say no, no, no.
But you again, but I just want to be very careful because I think, Lauren, I think you're right. The normal jury people were like, oh, this is, and they did. They heard from the WPATH guy and they heard from Erica Anderson. Um, but that's them saying this is what the standard should have been.
Yeah,
Great, but that's not what it was.
right. The um, the point that I want to finish making really quick
Okay.
is that this whole field has exploded. Starting from the around 2010, a little bit before that, this was sort of underground, and then it just became huge. The most of the providers that were around before it got really big actually did slow walk people through these things. They're still practicing. They probably have lost quite a lot of business to.
They'll just go to
That's
why am I
right.
going to work with you if it's going to take.
Right. So we had a guest, Patrick Hunter, who's I think on the second half of this episode, and our audience is going to hear him say, our clients, our customers, our patients come to us essentially through word of mouth, and the ones who prefer my style of giving patient care are more likely to find me. And people who want a different style of patient care are going to go find the other providers. And this is one of the reasons that I go and give testimony for bands, because while I don't think that this is something that should happen to any child, what makes it so urgent that something be done about it in law is that the industry cannot manage itself. It cannot manage its own quality, because even the people who want to make sure that those filters are in place and that they minimize the amount of harm, I realize our position is any of it is harm. But from their position, they want to minimize potential harm. Practically, they can't, because somebody else will hang a shingle next door and say, bring your Gallup letter and we'll cut you up.
Yeah, I think that's why I don't I mean, I think it worked in this trial that Erica's like, oh, this is what should have been happening. But I think legally, if your standard of care is what the vast majority of gender doctors were operating as, that's not what it was or is.
Well, the standard of care is not
If
necessarily
it's
what
not WPATH, then
it.
it's
So I'm trying to think of a good example here that's not medicine. If you were a home contractor, if you were building homes,
mhm.
and all of like for the last 10 years, all of the homes that you use this drywall, but the drywall is
Oh, Corey, let me, can I just stop you?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, here's a better analogy with the home contractors. Okay,
Okay.
if I call 10 home contractors and they say, "Yep, I'll build you a bathroom." But no, wait. But I
Yeah.
legally have to pull a permit first from the state of Missouri. I have to pull a permit to do the work. If the standard is everybody says you can't do this work in your area without first pulling a permit, the permit costs $2,000 extra.
Yeah.
That's the standard. We pull a permit. Okay. And that's what the vast majority of the home contractors do. But
Yeah.
what flipped is all of the contractors started saying, oh, fuck it. We know that we're supposed to pull a permit. We're not going to do it because we know that the guy's not going to track us down.
Yeah. That's not what standard of care means, though.
Okay.
So
So what were you going to say?
so if for years and years and years the standard was using this particular drywall, but we know that for whatever reason it has a health hazard associated with it, and then all of the contractors switch to the new stuff that works really well. Any of the contractors who are using the old materials, even though they're on the market, they ought to know, they were supposed to know those materials are inferior, that there's a superior substitute out, that the harm of those materials that they're using is well known and documented, and there's a substitute that is widely known and other people are using. That is like the standard.
But
So
you're saying that the standard of care in trans health, which was no gatekeeping anymore, is the better quality drywall?
it's it's not. So this is why a judge would say this is not a legal standard. WPATH would not be a legal standard. The standard of care is what are other teams of doctors doing that produce the safest and best patient outcomes. What is producing the best outcomes for the patients? And should these doctors have known about it and been following it? So it's not what did WPATH publish? It is what is the best practice for the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. And when somebody like WPATH issues guidance, it's actually supposed to be focused around providing the very best outcomes, not to blunt activists that are trying to pass bans. WPATH's SOC 8 was written not for the patients, it was written for the three of us so that it would make it harder for us to go to legislatures and pass bans. We were the major consideration in the standard of care, not the patient. And I feel like I'm maybe slightly over my skis here because I didn't come prepared to talk about this topic. And I am not a lawyer. I'm a law school dropout. So as always, the professionals in this industry are going to have a better view of this, and surely we'll have some comments about this. But if you're saying here's the common practice, the common practice is not the standard of care. And if you have one group of providers who are taking every step possible to make sure that they're minimizing harm, this is one of these ethical principles of medicine. If they are doing everything they can to minimize harm and to produce the best benefit, then that's going to emerge as the standard. And that's why Fox Varian would bring in these experts saying, actually, here's everything that ought to happen in order to maximize these two variables.
Okay, well, so let's the standard of care in plain English refers to treatments and practices that are appropriate for a specific disease that are both accepted by medical authorities and widely used by healthcare professionals. The standard of care is also sometimes referred to as the best practice. The legal definition is far more complex.
Right.
Okay.
So there you go with the best practice, right?
Yeah.
So what is the best practice for ensuring healthy outcomes for the patient? And those are not written down as a code. Those are things that are a combination of things like WPATH, but not limited to that. It's also research that gets published. It is the leaders in the field, and those are leaders because they have published and they have led organizations and they have histories of patient outcomes that they can refer to, publishing best practices.
Okay,
continuing education. It's all that stuff.
I'm gonna make a suggestion here. I'm gonna suggest that we try to find an attorney to come on to talk through with us standard of care. I'm also gonna say and make note that a couple states, at least one that I know of, has actually written into law that WPATH is the standard of care.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Okay, that has occurred in at least in Oregon. And
Oregon,
then
where they keep hurting people. Yeah, that makes sense.
I suggest we pivot
Let's
to the other news of the week because I want to get an attorney on because I do want to understand this better because we're going to have more detrans cases that this is going to affect.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And anyway, with the expression on Lauren's face, it looks like she's ready to shoot somebody anyway. So let's go to the other news of the week.
Well,
Please.
she might not have just seen the text message that I received from the 17-year-old that just says the young kids were playing on the roof.
I think it's appropriate to pause and go check on that.
Don't worry, the 17-year-old got them off the roof. He's watching them.
Okay. Cool.
You should really be Uncle Corey sometime and come and stay for a weekend.
Don't do it, Corey.
I'm gonna I can't,
Don't
but
do
I'm gonna
it.
tell you something.
What?
If I were 5 and I were on the roof, I would not be able to sit down for hours.
Oh, you don't know our roof. Our roof. Anyway, you've seen our house. It's one of those super weird houses that's this giant. It's like the mid-century modern weird giant slant roof.
He's trying to explain that it's a low roof, but it's still a roof, and they're running around on it. I can't really say much because I grew up in Philadelphia and we have row homes, and
Yeah.
many, many, many times my mother caught me running across the roofs of my neighbors and jumping from roof to roof over the alleys where there were gaps. One time, she actually caught me slithering through razor wire as I was shimmying up a drain pipe to get on the roof. So I cannot judge.
Yeah.
I cannot judge.
It's
Kids,
one of those. Isn't this one
kids,
of those the kids should be playing free? They don't have school today.
On the ground is what I would say. If it were me, I would pick up one of those children and probably body slam them into the grass.
well, they've probably spread out the
I want
mattresses that have been in the trash for a month underneath the roof so that they could jump off them safely.
I just
I,
all I
I
said was to the teenager who was watching them when he said the kids are playing on the roof. I said, "Was it our roof at least?"
could I explain something? Because you witnessed it, and maybe this just passed by you. But the time before last when I visited, I picked up one of your kids and I slipped on the grass and I fell down
With the kid. Yep.
with the kid, not on the kid. So I would not literally body slam them. That was a callback to me falling on slippery grass when I picked one up.
I,
Okay. We're so off topic here. Okay.
we
No,
are.
no, 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 no.
No. Okay.
I think you were trying to take the kid off the roof of the car, rolled your ankle, and then dropped him in the
Yeah,
grass.
that is what happened. I guess I was trying to retrieve a climber again, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's why I picked him up. Okay.
There is a climber in this household. Yep. And in the let the kids be free ethos of my parenting style right now.
That's fine. Let's get back to the news here.
Okay. What was the other big news that actually happened this week?
Well, one of my brothers in Canada went and killed a bunch of people. It's in British Columbia.
Yes, the mass shooter.
Yes.
Correct. And there's a whole bunch of nonsense going on with the way it's being reported. People are referring to this person as a female, not even just a girl, a female
In a dress.
in a dress. Right.
Yeah.
Banana.
Have we reached the point where is there a pattern here now?
Is there
This
a
was my
pattern?
biggest question. Is there a pattern?
Well, we're seeing trans shooters on a fairly regular basis. I don't know if that's a pattern.
Well, I think what we're seeing is mentally ill or struggling teenagers who, instead of being given good mental health help, have been led down a path of delusion. You know, like I honestly believe like these kids may have been school shooters 20 years ago as well for different mental health crises. Like we still in this country do not help kids with mental illness.
I don't know.
And now we are not just not helping them, we are making things worse by putting them on a path of medicalization. I don't actually know that this young man was medicalized.
Yes, it has been reported that he was medicalized, but
Okay.
the other complaint I've seen online is that none of his pictures that have been shared appear medical. I mean, this is the kind of bad media coverage that this is the thing I struggle with is
Yeah.
if we're going to have an actual conversation about what causes horrible things like this to happen, we do need to understand some of the drivers. So, was this individual on a medical pathway? I don't think that they were blocked, although it said that they were started on a transition pathway around the age of 12. But they don't look blocked in the photos. But that's not a good way to judging this by photo. It's not a good way to do this. We need actual evidence.
Yeah, he could have
No,
been
it's
blocked.
not. And it's very frustrating that a whole other element of this dynamic is not being reported on.
What's the other element?
That these kids who are identifying as trans have serious mental health conditions.
Yes.
Like we're not talking about that. And we're also not talking about how um affirming a belief in a cross-sex identity may make people more mentally unstable, especially young developing minds.
What do you mean we're not talking about it?
Well, we're talking about it, but in the press, that whole element of the story is largely not being reported on.
Oh, you're right. There's no experts. There's like not mental health experts saying, hey, leading a child to believe that they can become the opposite sex actually could cause more damage than helping them.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. That viewpoint is not represented in the media.
And that's sad. That's sad for larger society because they're not getting a full picture of what's going on, but it's sad for these kids. Like what if someone had intervened at 12 and given this kid real mental health help? Would this have happened? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's very irresponsible for um news outlets to not be reporting on the fact that this had anything to do with it, right? When you're straight up saying that this was a female shooter, number one, it is not. And to attribute a violent crime to a sex class that did not commit it is wrong. Number two, it's completely there's no journalistic integrity. So reading the article, if you're not familiar with what's going on, you think a girl went and shot up her school and killed her mother and her stepbrother, and that's not true. It
Yeah.
was a young man
Although
who
I'll say
who
it
simply identified as a girl.
in this case, though, I think it's very widely known that this is a male, and there's not a lot of confusion about that. I would say.
Widely
Like,
known in our circles?
no, I think just widely known.
You think it's widely known?
I think it's common knowledge.
But it's mostly presented as like a tangential fact. Like it has nothing to do with the kid's mental illness. It has nothing to do why the kid was so angry. I mean, and that's just not true.
Yeah.
It's that's not true.
Yeah. Do we want to hit a couple more of these headlines before we run?
Can we talk about one more thing about this
Yeah, yeah,
case though that
absolutely.
I also struggle with? Um, there was a real lag in when this information when we could find on X that this person was a trans-identified man and when it was confirmed in a national news source, and that's that's kind of an issue too.
Right, that isn't it. Because again, like most people don't go back and read the corrections. They read one article and they're like, "Oh, a girl shot up her school and killed her mom." And they're never gonna go back and see the redaction. They're never gonna go, you know what I mean? Like Putting out
Yeah.
false statements initially is irresponsible journalism. Again,
I,
it just is.
I suspect we're at the point where people have so much social media feeds and so much like getting notifications on their phones of anything that they've already read. I doubt that there's many people in this case.
Okay, that
And
didn't know this.
yeah, but a couple more headlines before we go.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So in California, a San Diego judge ordered Rady Children's Hospital to continue pediatric gender medical interventions for now after Attorney General Rob Bonta sued the hospital for attempting to pause treatments. So,
So the hospital pauses treatments. An attorney general in California sues the hospital
yep,
Yeah.
to make them start the treatments again.
yep.
And the hospital says, okie doke.
Well, but the attorney generals are oftentimes upholding a state law or a state constitutional amendment, like New York State has, that enshrines these into constitutional law.
Yeah. In this case, the state said that the hospital violated merger conditions by requiring it to maintain services through 2034. So this would be a very putting a lot of leverage into a condition that was not probably not meant to support this case, this particular use case.
These conflicts are going to keep happening, though.
And you know, the hospital in California, they very likely want to continue doing this. So all they probably needed was a pretext. The Food and Drug Administration sent a warning letter to 12 companies marketing chest binders to minors. There's 12? The agency says binders are medical devices and must comply with federal registration labeling rules. Chest binding carries documented risks, including rib injuries and restricted lung capacity. There are still no long-term pediatric safety studies. I am aware that we judge history differently than we judge our contemporary day-to-day circumstances. But I just don't understand why we can simultaneously believe that foot binding is cruel and sadistic and barbaric. And then
But breast
also
binding is not?
breast binding is affirming and beautiful and you know,
Does seem
so
to be
modern,
a
so progressive.
contradiction, doesn't it?
Yeah, to me it is.
Yeah.
Were you actually surprised that there were 12 companies that make chest binders?
Well, I
Or
wouldn't be
that market them
surprised
to
if
kids?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was like 12 Etsy people
Oh no.
making three or four binders a
Oh
week and mailing them out.
no.
But mass production is surprising.
These are not only mass produced, but then there's whole programs to send them out for free.
Yeah, it's so it's so
Creepy?
alien. It's alien. I don't know why we do that.
Oh, but there's a W path dig here too. Under SOC 7, when parents would ask to have clinical consultations around breast binding for their kids, the clinicians refused to schedule those as appointments. Um, and it was in SOC 8 that it was added that it basically gave doctors the go ahead. Yeah, you can actually schedule this as a clinical visit. They didn't want to do it because also the doctors didn't know anything. They didn't know. When we say there's like no studies, they were just like, we don't know what this does or what the clinical risks are. I would be doing the consultations.
I I'll ask you a question some other time. wanted to ask this over and over, but now is not the right time.
Oh God, now I'm gonna be
Leaving us all hanging.
I know. More news. In California, male athlete A.B. Hernandez continues to compete and win in girls track despite Title IX investigations and a pending lawsuit from female teammates. That's you have to give it to somebody being that stubborn, that dedicated to sport, that they'll keep doing it even though it's probably illegal.
There was the other.
And against the objections of the other girls on his team.
Some of the other girls. So surely anytime you have this type of conflict going on, that you're going to divide the girls into two camps. And there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that he's got a group of female supporters, including faculty members who keep patting him on the back saying, "Go get him, girl."
Yeah.
There was also the wrestler case.
Oh my gosh, in Washington?
Yeah, which was completely disgusting.
What happened there?
A young girl unknowingly had to compete with a young man in wrestling.
Yeah, these are high
And
school students.
right, high
Yeah.
school students. This girl does not know that she's competing with a boy. He digitally penetrates her during the match.
Alleged.
Okay. Either way, there is no circumstance in which a young woman should be wrestling. This is a contact sport. She should not have been wrestling this young man. And if nothing else, somebody should have told her before she got into that ring.
How come she just couldn't look at the other wrestler and know that it's a boy?
This is a boy who has been on a medical pathway.
Oh, but he was 190 pounds.
She was in the 190. This is the weight class.
Oh,
The follow-up was that the parents reached out to the school who did nothing for 53 days.
they panicked, but they were, what is the term? Required
Mandated. They were
mandated
mandated.
reporters. And allegedly, they were waiting for more direction before they reported anything. And eventually, the family, I guess the girl herself, reached out to a news reporter and said, "Here's the thing that happened to me." And I guess that lubricated the wheels a little bit, and they're moving forward on something now. So this is just going to keep happening in Oregon, Illinois, Washington, California,
New York.
New York, and Massachusetts, and what is it, Vermont, that has the pink armband case that's going to the Supreme Court. And
That's New Hampshire, but yes.
oh, that's New Hampshire. Okay. So all of these things are going to keep happening until they stop. And my recommendation for parents that live in these states that are not even likely to be purple is either start organizing and fix things. Go find, there are organizations in your state that are trying to change things. Colorado, that's another big one. They're trying to fix what's wrong. If you're not participating and you've got kids, then you should at least consider leaving.
We really are. You really think that?
Yeah, I do. And here's the reason why. In the long run, when states start to lose their economic base, they're going to start updating their policies to try to fix it. And this is cyclical. What will happen is that a lot of good doers will come in, make bad laws that'll create suffering, create discontent, and then you'll have different ideology come in, try to fix things and restore it. Fixing things usually means not better policies, but fewer policies, revoking policies. And then after 10, 15 years, people say, we miss it, what we used to have. So you see it with rent control policies. You see it with different types of criminal justice policies. It's all cyclical. So yeah, I do recommend picking up and leaving because you can go someplace where your kids are not going to be fed gender ideology and forced to play with your female children are not going to have to be exposed continually to men in their spaces. And it will also put pressure on the state to revoke the crazy policies.
Okay, but in that scenario, that means there's a very small number of safe states because even
Yeah.
in good old red Missouri, we might have banned puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries, but you can still be socially transitioned in secret at your school.
Well, the direction of these policies in the states where they've already banned these procedures, the direction is only going one way.
Lauren, did you enjoy that testimony in this red state over that bill on social transition?
I did not.
Do you want to just give Corey a very brief
Oh, it was a
guide into
total
what
it was a
happened?
total shit show. Um, we went and testified on a bill to stop social transitioning in schools, and there was a Democratic Senator, Maggie Nuremberg. Don't laugh, that's really her name. Who started the whole hearing by waxing poetic about her former student Joey that she helped facilitate social transition with. And then there was another Democratic senator, Stephen Weber, who tried to argue with me after I called socially transitioning proto-gay youth homophobic. He tried to accuse the Republican senators of being homophobic because they don't support gay marriage or this particular article they were trying to get Mona that would codify same-sex protections in the workplace, which we don't really need because we have Bostock. Anyway, he kept pressing me to say that the Republican senators were homophobic. Um, and I just kept saying, that's not a bill I'm here to testify on. I'm here to testify on social transition in schools, which I do believe is homophobic. Um, it kind of devolved. It was really it was an interesting
There was some yelling
interesting
involved.
there was some yelling. Yeah.
And then the Democratic senator was kind of yelling at the chair of the committee to get your hearing in order. And the chair was like, "Sir, you started this line of questioning with her. Like you went
Yeah.
there. Why can't she answer?" Um, it was a
And
mess.
when I wasn't giving him the answers that he wanted,
Yeah.
he kept repeating, "Aren't don't you think they're homophobic? Don't you think they're homophobic?" And I just was like, "Sir, that's not what I'm here to testify on. Can we please stay on topic?" And then he did
Sure,
finally
this
get.
is a Wendy's.
Yeah, exactly.
What?
It's like going to Wendy's and insisting that they give you a taco, and you're like, that's just, we don't do that here. Like, anyway. If anybody's interested, my testimony, the back and forth with Senator Stephen Weber and the comments from Senator Nuremberg about socially transitioning a student, they're all up on X. You guys can watch them. I did my best.
They're in the show notes, hopefully.
Yeah, we could put them in the show notes.
And on that, and speaking of notes, we have to end on that note because we got to jump over to another call.
That's right. On
All
to
right.
the next.
Thanks all.
Uh-oh.
Everyone, welcome to Informed Dissent. Um, We have a guest today that we're going to introduce, but first we will introduce ourselves. I am Jamie Reed, whistleblower from a pediatric gender center. Yeah, that's me this week.
I'm Lauren Legere, co-executive director of the LGB Carriage Coalition. Corey, take it away.
I am Corey Cohn, a communicator on gender disillusionment and related issues, and also a podcaster apart from this one. Come listen to Heterodork sometime.
Oh, for God's sake.
Seriously?
Shameless self-promotion.
I know.
Does
I
Corey have to
haven't done
pay
it in
for
a while.
that?
I do. I pay for it spiritually.
No, you need to send me more Nina Paley gloves.
I can work that out.
Our guest this week is Patrick Hunter. Patrick is a physician. Do you want to tell us what kind of physician you are?
I'm just a meek, humble general pediatrician trying to mind my own business.
How long have you been a pediatrician?
30 plus years, 92? What was that?
Okay.
Yeah.
And private practice,
Yes.
hospital, you just
I'm in private practice. I've done a little bit of everything. Began in private practice, then went back into academics and taught for a couple years um, at a residency program, and then went back into private practice with a large pediatric healthcare system, which is what exposed me to gender. Um, and then left that organization, and I'm now back in tiny little Milton, Florida. You wouldn't be able to find it on a map if you try.
so
Well,
let's
that's good though, because didn't you have some of the activists come after you for a while?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And they can find me, but
Oh,
I'm not too worried. Maybe I should be, but I'm not.
so to get started, I think we'll come back to how you first kind of fell into gender. The first thing I wanted to start with was um, med school. I've never been to med school. Has anyone else been to med school? Nope. Okay. I'm curious about ethics and the offering and kind of what your training looked like in med school back when you went.
Back when I went to medical school, which was in '88, it's a long time ago. Um, we had a little bit of ethics. What I remember most was we had like clinical discussions with a family practice doctor, and he would incorporate in sort of like a seminar setting with 8 or 12 students ethical concepts, but there was never any formal ethics courses, no testing or quizzes or anything like that. There was no class that was titled bioethics or medical ethics. Just didn't exist. It still doesn't exist that I know of.
Was the seminar or the conversations, were they grounded in like ethical principles that then you could like tease out, or where do you feel like you've come to some of your ethical understanding?
My mother, how's that sound?
So pre-med school.
Pre-medical. And I've heard that. I've heard that if you don't come to medical school grounded with some um type of foundation in right and wrong, good and evil, if I'll say that, it's hard to teach it at that point when you're 22, 23 years old. Um, I don't one of the, when you say principles, it makes me think of Beecham and Childress and those four principles, which are not ethics or they're not the totality of ethics. Um, I cannot recall when I first heard those. I think it would have been in residency. It would have been in residency because our chief of pediatrics was very concerned about doing the right thing. Um, and that may have been when I was first exposed to it, which would have been in the mid 90s. That was written in '79, Beecham and Childress.
And what
So
and what is this? This is this can you explain what Beachman Childress is?
they are two bioethicists. Um, what's their, I think their book is on my bookshelf somewhere. I'm looking for it, but I can't see it because, um, but they wrote a report on this came out of the Belmont report, um, in response to the Tuskegee syphilis experiments and other evidence from the 50s, 60s, 70s that there was not a lot of ethics in medicine. So they wrote this in response to medical research, not the practice of medicine, but medical research. And I think that's where sometimes we trip up as physicians. So their principles were justice, autonomy, beneficence, and non-malfeasance. And those were to be applied to medical ethics within a research setting. And then they moved into clinical practice, which they have some application there. But that's not the beginning and end all of ethical behavior. But it is all that we're taught in medicine. That's it. Those four principles. And they're in competition. Beecham and Childers say that in later books and later writings, that those four are competing with each other. And one has to take predominance. And nowadays it's autonomy. Autonomy is all that matters. Justice is defined, I think, in the patient getting what they want, um, which is not what justice means. Even if it means the patient can get something that hurts them, which is not beneficence, but autonomy is, it's not just in medicine, it's culturally. You get what you want, then you're going to be happy. Or
Can
But
I
even in medical ethics, autonomy doesn't really mean getting what you want, right? It doesn't mean that patients are allowed to just pick and choose whatever treatment they want and self-diagnose. Like you couldn't come in and say, I identify with cancer, give me radiation. So it,
so
I mean,
I
I
know
agree
exactly.
that, yeah, I mean, I agree that like generally that's what people think of when they think about autonomy, but in a context of medical ethics, maybe you could elaborate on what autonomy really means in that context, because I think you're
So
right. People have the wrong impression of what it means.
so going back to where these principles originated was medical research. And autonomy is the right to refuse a treatment. It actually was the right to refuse enrollment in research. You cannot do research on me. You cannot do research on people without their consent, without their autonomy saying, I want to be involved in research.
Mhm.
Okay. It was done all the time. It was done in um, homes with um, people who did not have the ability to consent. Okay. Some of the vaccine trials were done in that setting, where consent was not possible. So it was began as the right to refuse treatment, or actually the right to refuse research, correction, and then it began the right to refuse treatment at the end of life. Is primarily where it was. I don't want to be hooked up to a ventilator. I don't want to be resuscitated. So it was always the right to refuse, but it has morphed where autonomy now is the ultimate ethical principle. I don't believe it is, but it's the ultimate where I get to demand what I want. So it morphed out of research into um, clinical care always being the right to refuse, and now it's the right to demand what I want.
so can I go a few steps back? We've mentioned a few things. I think we should flush out what they are. So the Belmont report and the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. So the very first statement about how to interact with a research participant in medicine is much earlier than Belmont, though.
You would go back. Are you speaking of Nuremberg?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Nuremberg is what kind of laid down some of these principles.
Yes.
And then, just so people are kind of following, I think a lot of listeners know what the Tuskegee experiment was or is, but just to kind of explain it in a little bit more detail, I think this was run from the 30s to the 70s. The
Correct.
CDC was a part of it, and
It
they
was the public health service that then the CDC took over it.
enrolled African American males who the doctors knew that they had syphilis, but they were not telling the individuals, they were not giving them a diagnosis, nor were they giving them the current treatment at the time.
Yes.
Instead, they enrolled them to watch how they progressed through this disease state all the way up to
Yes.
death, and then would perform autopsies and they were looking to understand, I think they were looking to understand the disease, right? They were
And
looking
the natural history of untreated
at
syphilis.
syphilis, right? But they didn't tell the participants that that's what they were doing to them.
Yes, while being deceptive, and when treatment came into vogue, I've it's been maybe a year since I've read about it. The
I think
treatment was discovered penicillin in the
Ellen
40s. They did not
40s.
offer them treatment. They actually, some community physicians in the Tuskegee area were going to treat their patients. They
Yes.
told them not to. They intervened and told them, do not treat them. You'll ruin our experiment type things. Very, very terrible what was done.
And it was after this study that basically the Belmont report came out of an act of Congress, I believe, to kind of codify how we run medical experiments on people.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's where, from that, I'm not exactly sure the legislative or government origins of it, but out of that came IRBs, institutional review boards, informed consent, and things like that.
Okay. So let's tie this in with gender. So you are a pediatrician and you started seeing patients related to gender. Do you remember when?
2015, when I
Oh,
started my job with this children's health system.
okay. What were you seeing?
I remember the very, very first patient. It was a young woman. She was 14. She had just been discharged from a mental health hospital. She had a falling out with the local LGBTQ clinic, and they were no longer going to prescribe her testosterone. And she and her mother came to me asking me to continue her testosterone.
Okay. So wait. This is 2015.
2015.
So this would have been WPATH Standard of Care 7,
7.
which had an age 16 for testosterone in it anyway. But so she's 14 and she had already been on testosterone.
Yeah, I was 14, 15. I don't think she was 16.
Okay. Did how did you respond? What did you think was going on?
Oh, I immediately, well, first of all, like you do, I took a full history, never seen this patient before, and took a full history, trying to learn where are we coming from, what's going on here. Because I'm not going to trust somebody else's diagnosis. I want to, I may trust it after I take my own history, but I think learning this person had been hospitalized multiple times, cutting, self-harm, multiple different antidepressants, antipsychotics, probably. I don't remember the details. It's been a while. But I was like, I don't even know I didn't know kids were being transitioned at that point. It was like cold water in the face. I'm like, what is going on here? Okay. And then I realized this is much, much, much more complex than just prescribing testosterone. And I could see that she was having effects of testosterone, acne, hair growth, her voice has changed. But I'm like, wow, I don't know what's going on here, but I don't think the solution is testosterone. This is much more complex. This is what I'm thinking in my head because
Did
I know
she have
nothing about
a
this.
did she have a gender dysphoria diagnosis in her chart or anything?
Oh, there was no chart. There was no chart.
There's nothing.
There was
Okay.
nothing. I mean, this was cold. So I'm like learning on the fly, and I remember
So
go on.
were you just like, why is this girl being prescribed testosterone? Like, if there's no chart and
Yes.
there's, yeah, like, what is, yeah, why are we
And
giving this
I think
14-year-old
I don't
girl
know if it was
steroids?
this patient or I learned to do this through subsequent patients. Um, I was like, well, I don't prescribe chemotherapy for cancer. Okay, I'm a general pediatrician. I can't prescribe testosterone for gender dysphoria because I don't feel qualified. I don't want to harm your child. I don't know what I'm doing here. But I also immediately knew this was
Yeah.
instinct, wisdom, reason, this was wrong. I knew in this person's that because it wasn't learning, you've been on testosterone for however long, I don't know if it was 6 months, 18 months at that point. Is this helping? And it wasn't because we had just been hospitalized. So whatever claims that this is the beginning and end all of this young woman's issues, it wasn't the lack of testosterone in her body.
Patrick, I'm really interested that you hesitated on the word wrong. Did you?
Did I?
Yeah, I mean, to you, when you saw this patient, something in your ethical code was like, nope, this is not.
Well, I don't know that I hesitated probably because I needed to know more.
Okay.
And I think and I'm like and I left that appointment. I'm like, what is this? And then I started my journey researching this and learning more. Um, I remember the very first thing I read was the American Psychological Association's 2015, I think 2014, 2015. I remember reading that. I remember researching the authors. I remember none of them were doctors, but when do psychologists recommend these interventions? I remember that was the initial thing. I'm like, why are psychologists recommending medical interventions? Because psychiatrists do that. And when do psychiatrists and psychologists recommend hormonal interventions? And I'm like, I'm skeptical. I'm naturally skeptical. Um, I was trained. Okay, go back to my training. Dr. Bass, God rest his soul, taught us to practice medicine slowly, to practice medicine with great caution, and practice only when your hand is forced. That's what we were taught. Most things will get better if we leave them alone. Okay? Only intervene when you know you have to because our potential of doing harm is so great. He used to harp on us that all the time, two, three times a year. He would have a lecture. It seemed like we would harp on those three things. So I think that taught me to be skeptical from the beginning. Recognize that we can do great harm. So, but I'm also, maybe there's something here. So the APA policy, I don't know what year that was, 14, 15. Then I found an endocrinologist. He and I started working together, sharing papers. Remember, we read this long-term Swedish study, Dana, together. What do you think of this? I don't know what year this is, 16, 17 now. Um, Found the WPATH SOC7, read that. I knew as soon as I read their informed consent model that's happening in some United States clinics, I'm like, this is not informed consent. This is a play in words. Um, so that's
So you went straight to the medical establishment to look for answers about what this was. And you were
yeah.
still, and even after reading that, you were still like, this doesn't make sense. And I think a lot of doctors would stop there. They'd say, "Oh, well, the American Psychiatry Association, and this association says it, so I guess it's okay." You know?
I'll tell you a secret.
Please.
Doctors can be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
we've noticed.
Okay. Oh, so
Oh,
the,
I want to jump back for a minute. Sorry. Um, in pediatrics, can you tell me, okay, like what is slowly caution only when your hand is forced? Like all my interactions with the pediatricians are like ear infection, strep throat. Like where what are other instances? Like how does that work in other situations? Like are you slow, cautious only when your hand is forced and like
wait, I'll tell you another story. I'm a young doc in private practice. This is probably mid late 90s, maybe early aughts. And one of my partners, we were in a busy private practice in North Carolina. And my partner, who was full of wisdom, um, he said to me one morning, there's going to be 120 kids that come through these doors today for us to see. Probably only 1 to 3 of them need to be seen today. Okay. It's going to be on your schedule, my schedule. Are you going to catch it or are you going to miss it? Good luck. Have a good day. Okay. And what he meant by that, and I thought about it after he said it, and I think about it all the time. Half of those kids are there for well visits. They don't need to be seen that day. The other half are maybe a medication refill, probably few of those. Back then, we didn't treat a lot of kids with ADHD like we do now. Um, Most of them are going to have self-limited viral illnesses that are going to go away. One or two or three of them are going to have bacteremia, a UTI that need to be treated that day. So my job as a general pediatrician is to mostly reassure parents that things are going to get better and let the kid pass and let the kid pass and let the kid pass and don't stop them. Because every time I stop a kid and do something, there's a real good chance I'm going to hurt them. And it's as simple as if I give antibiotics repeatedly for strep throat, the kid's going to end up in the operating room to get his tonsils removed. Even though the evidence-based medicine for tonsillectomy to prevent future strep is very poor, very low certainty that that has any benefit. But if a mother gets 3 or 4 diagnoses of strep throat, a lot of doctors and a lot of parents will want a tonsillectomy. I've had a handful of patients of mine who have had devastating outcomes from their tonsillectomies and adnectomies. It's 1 in 1,000 kids, 1 in 10,000 kids have major problems after surgery. I don't want to be a part of that. So I'm caught, and I don't want to give a kid an unnecessary antibiotic and they end up with diarrhea or yeast infection for something that's not needed. So the art of primary care is when do you need to act, or any medicine, any medicine. That's the idea behind do no harm. First, do no harm. First, let most patients pass. They will get better on their own. Now, that's humbling because we like to think we're in there. Every single kid that saw me needed me that day. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Only my ego says that. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
You did, and Corey unmuted, and I feel like Corey has something here.
Well, one of the things, Patrick, that really blows my mind is how many doctors have told parents, would you rather have a dead son or a living daughter? And then I hear you talk about here's all of the sophisticated thinking, like the risk trade-offs I have to make, even for something that I would consider pretty simple. Uh,
An ear infection, a strep throat, a sore throat. Yes.
so you're extremely cognizant about all these trade-offs for, and I would say not just the trade-offs, but also the second order effects of any of these types of procedures. And then I compare that with the scale of telling a parent, if you don't do this, your child is going to die. It's, I don't know, I don't want to make a joke about binaries here, but I can't understand how both of these types of risk models in terms of conveying medical risks to parents can coexist. How is like in the professional field, I don't understand how they can both exist because uh, they're just not in the same universe.
And I jokingly said, what did I say about doctors? We make mistakes.
This
Okay,
is,
we're real good.
Doctors,
I mean,
We're,
a mistake would be like I assigned or I prescribed the wrong medication, right? That would be a
yes,
mistake.
or I calculated the dose wrong or
Right.
whatever. Okay, but so, but we make bigger mistakes. We make much, much bigger mistakes. I mean, frontal lobotomies. For when I was in medical school, it's very common to do gastrectomies and remove the stomach and the intestine for ulcer disease. And then we found out ulcer disease was an infection. Okay. It took a long time for medicine to change that idea that gastric ulcers do not need surgery. Okay. So we make big mistakes in how we understand disease.
Mm.
Um, but then doctors have egos. Okay. We think we are saving lives every single day, and we're not. Most of what we do is very, very mundane. Um, but we want to think highly of ourselves. I hate to say it. That's why we can say, if you don't follow me, your child's going to kill themselves. That's how good I am. No, you're not that good. You're not. I mean, 30 plus years, I think I can count on both hands and half of a foot the number of times I've really saved a kid's life. Okay. It's not a lot. It's not a lot. Now, I'm not a surgeon, but I think there's probably, you could probably find a lot of surgeons who do unnecessary surgery. We know that. Okay. Okay. Not just gender surgeries. Okay. Not just gender surgeries. So we think highly of ourselves. That's why we can make claims like, do you want to have a dead daughter or a live son? That's their egos speaking.
It's not medical at all.
No, it's coercion. It's grandiose thinking. Um, it's terrible. I don't know if I've I don't know if I've shared this with you all privately, but I think it's an ABC news article. I think it's from 2011. Joanna Olson Kennedy saying that, quoted by the reporter.
Yeah.
2011. It's a long time ago to think that much of yourself.
I think
So,
if
It's
we
terrible.
asked her, she would say that she is saving lives, right?
Oh, I think she would. She would.
oh,
I mean,
yeah.
no doubt she probably believes that. And any harms that are coming of it, she's going to deny. That's her ego.
So Patrick, after you saw this first patient, were there more than that came in? And you said you were working for someone else. You were in an
I was in
organization.
a pediatric healthcare system in
Okay, so you were in a
Orlando.
system. So
Yes.
there's obviously a way that people are funneling these kids. How many
Yes.
are you starting to see more of them? Are you starting to have more questions? Do they all fit this same pattern of kind of comorbidities and
Yeah. So
etc.?
I think I would see two or three a year will be my guess. And every single one of them was a girl. Every single one. Um, all asking to start testosterone, already on it, looking for refills, wanting a referral. In 2018, the health system dramatically announced that it was hiring an adolescent doctor who was trained by Joshua Safer at Mount Sinai to come down and start doing transitions, which is the year I resigned from the AAP for the first time. Um, that's when the AAP policy came out. And I read the policy. My hospital's starting this. I can't be a part of this. Um, so they were
And
coming in two, three times a year.
for listeners that don't know, the AAP is the American Academy of
Academy of
Pediatrics.
Pediatrics.
And
Yes.
you read their statement on gender
Yes.
transitions for minors.
Shared it with my partners. I remember sharing it with my partners in my office that I shared an office with. And I think at this point they thought I was crazy because every third conversation I had with them was about gender. Um, but I mean, I was worried. I was worried because all the kids were the same. And then um, I remember reading Abigail Schreier's book. I think that was in 2020. And I read that and I was like, how did she get access to my exam rooms?
Hmm.
How did she know
She
what
was
was
that on
going
the
on?
nose, yeah.
Yeah, and because all the kids that were coming in, they were saying the same script. If I hesitated, if I raised concerns, um, I was called transphobic, and I'm like, where did that come from? Okay, so the same script. I've been this way since I was born. My earliest memories was that I was born in the wrong body. So very similar stories from my experience in my exam rooms. And then I read Abigail Schreier's book, and I'm like, whoa, this is something bigger. And that's when, so 2020 was when I was really, really, I can't just not cooperate with this. I never referred a kid to a gender clinic. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't, I remember telling a mother, I can't do something for your child that I think will hurt your child. Um, and
Were the parents supportive? Were the parents also interested in having their kids transition,
oh
or were
yeah,
there some?
yeah,
Yeah.
all of them wanted this to continue or wanted me to start it. And I remember one woman standing up when I told her I can't cooperate with this. There's a formal term called cooperation with evil in ethics. And I didn't say it like that, but I said, I'm afraid at the end of the day, your child will be hurt, and I really can't participate in this. So I can't make a referral. You know where the referral, the doctor that's office was in the main hospital 4 miles from my office. I said, you can do that referral yourself, but I need the PCP to sign off on it. You can change your primary care doctor. You can change that, but I cannot participate in this. I
What?
cannot put the referral in.
And she didn't pause at all when you were kind of saying that?
She stood up. She sort of I'm sitting down. She approached me. I remember this to this day, and I hope things have turned out well for this family. I don't know. And she said to me, I really, really, something along these lines. I'm paraphrasing. I really, really admire you for your convictions. I know that you think you're right, you're wrong, but I admire you. Thank you so much. And she kindly shook my hand and they left.
What does that mean?
That
I
means
admire you
he's
for
a
your
bigot,
conviction.
just didn't know, but he,
I
yeah.
was ignorant. She was smart.
Yeah.
She knew what was best for her child. But I think I glimmered a sense that maybe there's more here than just me being transphobic. I'm not transphobic. I don't care who you are. I want your child to do well. I tell the parents all the time, I have the same goal as you for your child. I want what's best for your child. Now, I don't have the passion and love, but I'm here to give you a rational, as objective and accurate assessment of what I think is going on. And it's gotten harder in the last 5, 6, 7 years because of the autonomy. Parents come in and they want their kid transition. They want their kid on Adderall. They want their kid on an antidepressant.
Okay, so let's circle all the way back. So those four principles are autonomy.
Beneficence, non-malfeasance, do good, don't do harm, and be just.
Okay, so autonomy, beneficence, non-malfeasance, justice, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel like the primary driver now regarding medical transition, if the evidence has gone away, it's becoming a complete autonomy discussion. Corey, I know you've touched on this a lot, haven't you?
A bit.
Yep.
So we started to go down the road of what autonomy started out as, which is the ability to refuse,
Enrollment in research.
but now you're seeing it as the demand for.
Yes. Consumer-based medicine. You demand what you want, in this case, hormones and surgery, even if it's going to harm me, because this is what I want. And you are being unjust. You're not giving me justice if you don't give that to me.
Is that a valid claim?
No, but I think everything is collapsing. Beneficence, non-malfeasance, and justice are collapsing into autonomy. The patient's autonomy rules the day. They can demand what they want, even if it's going to harm them. And if you don't give it, you're an unjust physician.
So
Yeah, and you're not actually doing good because you're harming me because I said I wanted it. So
Yes,
it actually turns all of them on their head.
correct.
It makes everything the opposite. If you're elevating autonomy, like what I want, above all of these other principles, it would turn all of them on their head.
Can,
It
can we
does.
talk about a case that is a little hard for me to work my way through on my own?
yeah.
What about a drug like Cialis?
Okay,
Yes.
well, I have to look up this drug.
It's for erectile dysfunction.
This is most doctors would not. Well, nowadays there's enough
I'm
subtext
interested to just
that
see where we're going here.
Yeah.
yeah.
I,
But my belief
I
is that
also I promised Patrick there'd be no conversations about penis wipes, and then you jumped into erectile dysfunction. So
oh, you know what? I'm not going to ask about penis wipes, but I do want to use this as just as an
Okay.
example. We don't have to go into the technical functioning of it,
Yes.
but it is a drug. It does require a doctor to prescribe it, and it can have adverse side effects. But it is something that the patients who ask for it, they believe that it's going to enhance a really important um,
Part of their
part of
life.
their life, right? So you might consider it a lifestyle drug, but it's also something where somebody says, I really feel like I need this in order to be happier or to keep my marriage going. Um, isn't that okay that some consumers come into the doctor and say, "Hey, give me this thing"?
You're out of my realm here
Okay,
from a clinical aspect.
you don't give this
Um,
to kids.
yeah, well, although there's more and more teenage boys asking for it.
Seriously.
Oh yes, probably because of pornography. I've had more and more teenage boys ask for it because they're
Because
not
they
allowed.
because they
They're not,
genuinely have dysfunction now?
yes, with
Yeah.
a human being, with a human being. It's sad. It's sad.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So it's a little bit in my realm, but I think the most common thing that happens to me is parents coming in asking for antidepressants, asking for ADHD medicines, and we're getting down to age 4, 5, 6 parents asking for this. Okay. And
That's
young kids.
brutal.
Okay. It is. And I sit long enough and I take a history from them, and then I learn, and this is a new formulation of thinking probably of mine in the last 6 to 12 months is, and I've been telling parents, you're coming into me because you're having trouble with your family. You're having trouble with your life. Um, you're struggling with a divorce, with a death in the family. Um, Grandma died and the child's struggling and they want me to put the kid on an antidepressant. And I'm like, your child's suffering from grief, acute grief. Um, Whatever the life issue, the divorce, the custody battles, and you're asking me to treat this as a medical problem with medication. And I'm not good at life issues. And there's a better solution than relying on a doctor to medicate your child because of whatever it is that's going on in your family and in your child's life. That doesn't go over well. Well, I would argue that it does go over well. Most parents are like, thank you for listening. You're the first doctor who's ever not tried to push something on me. But I think those are the type of people that maybe come to me because patients self-select who they're going to see. They hear from neighbors and friends. But we're in a solution in a culture now that medicine, doctors, experts can fix everything. They can fix everything. Call an expert and you'll get your problems. And most of life is full of struggles and suffering and heartache. And we used to deal with that with family and friends, but now it's an expert.
It's
I don't know
really
if I'm answering.
you're also striking a nerve because the gender center where I worked at was opened in part because there was a parent of a girl who was very gender nonconforming, and she brought the her daughter in to see a clinician and said, this has been really challenging. This is really hard. I just want, we just can make her a boy. And the physician told the parent, um, I'm sorry, but sometimes, some people do struggle in life.
Everybody
Struggling,
struggles in life.
struggling.
Everybody does.
But the doctor said to the mom, like, you know, I see you're struggling. I see your child is struggling, but we can't take, like, we just can't magically make struggle go away. And she was so offended by that because she just wanted to medically transition her kid. It was part of what pushed her into creating a transparent, organization and start and push the other doctors to create the clinic because she was so frustrated that the doctor would just say, you know what, sometimes we just suffer. And there's ways we have to address our suffering, but this isn't it.
That didn't go over well.
No.
No. And But I think it's only in the last, this is going back to Corey's comment about Cialis, only in the last 10, 15 years have we looked to doctors to solve all of our problems, all of our, um, and it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but it's the stuff that's come in my office in the last 10 years is much different than what came 30 years ago. Um, it's we don't have the capacity in medicine to the skill to do this. We obviously don't have the skill to do this in gender, all the people that are being harmed.
Have handled that 30 years ago.
What's that?
It sounds like what we're getting at is that there are deeper fundamental things going on in our culture that
Correct.
previously would have had other routes. And I'll just go to that's what you would talk to your priest about or your your circle of friends or the community group or something like that. Like it sounds like people are now asking medicine to step in for social pain, social ills.
Yes. So what my Aunt Jane, who I think would be close to 110 years old if she were alive, she said the four F's get you through life: family, friends, faith, and fun. Fun's a little bit of diversion from the struggles of life, and the other three can help you deal with the struggles: family, friends, and faith. Now it's call the expert and we'll get a pill. Call the gender doc and he'll transition your child.
So when you talk to those parents who are asking for an antidepressant because their child lost a grandparent 3 months ago, what is do you refer them to talk therapy? Do you try other avenues?
And again, this is not scientific, okay? Because we don't track in clinical care, just like the gender docs don't track what's going on. I don't track what's going on. But I do know that if I sit and listen to the child, okay, um, hear them, hear what's bothering them, okay, discover why they're in 3 times, 4 times in a row for a stomach ache or a headache,
Mhm.
okay. If I sit and listen and ask you to come back in 3 weeks, I want to hear more, and come back in 2 months and I want to hear more, a lot of these kids get better. They get better. They overcome the grief of the death in the family. They learn to cope with their parents' divorce. They learn to deal with the bully at school. Okay. Um, I read this somewhere, 60, 70% of primary care is mental health issues is the cause of the headache or the stomach ache or the anxiety or the depression. If I sent every single one of those to a therapist, first of all, I'm not sure they get treated properly. And I'm going to give them one of the things I say to parents: do you want your child to be diagnosed with anxiety? One of the things I commonly do is I say, this is the definition of anxiety. This is the definition of depression, where I'd have to look at DSM,
Yeah.
but it's, you can't exit the home. You can't engage in normal activities. And I'll point out the strength. Your child's going to school every day. Your child's getting good grades. Your child's eating. Your child's not losing weight. Your child's struggling with this issue. And I don't want to give your child a formal diagnosis. And most of them come in, my child has anxiety. I need something for that. My child has depression. I need something for that. That's usually the way most appointments start nowadays in a consumer based. My child is transgender and needs to be transitioned or needs the medications to continue. Um, I just listen and have them come back, and a lot of these things get better with time. Now, if somebody's actively suicidal or actively depressed, then I will refer. I often refer, the most common place I refer to is for family therapy. The parents want to know why their 7-year-old is struggling and somebody to get into their 7-year-old's head. Like, nobody can get inside a 7-year-old's head. Nobody can get inside a 13. Nobody can get inside my head half the time. Okay. I said, this is an issue where the family needs to learn to better address what the family's struggling with.
I apologize. I got a hard stop, but um, it's to see my therapist. So I'll talk to you later.
Hi, Corey. Patrick, it feels like you're kind of in a one. Are you like, are there other doctors who are operating like you are now? Do you feel like in the pediatrician realm?
I don't know that I can speak for I think more and more, I think the majority of pediatricians, the more majority of pediatricians are concerned about the gender world. We discovered that a few years ago
I
when
think
we
are they
went to
also
the,
concerned about the high rates of the ADHD meds and the SSRIs and the psychotropic meds being used in kids too, though.
I don't know if I can answer that question. I think there's more and more stuff. Like there's been recently in the last year, two articles in the New York Times, two articles in the Wall Street Journal about SSRIs and psychotropic drugs and how lots of kids are on pathways of two, three, four drugs. And a lot of times when I talk to parents, they know it's true because they're on theyese drugs. Okay, they're on these drugs. I showed a mother a headline with her like 13-year-old, 12-year-old daughter. I think it was, I don't know if it was the New York Times or Wall Street Journal that SSRIs will just inhibit sexual drive. And I said, I have no idea what this does to a prepubertal child when this is your sexual drive is developing in puberty. Whether it's reversible or not, we don't know. And the mother looked at it, pointed at the headline, and she goes, that's me for the last 20 years.
Wow.
So they've experienced this. But we are under so much pressure as physicians to make the customer happy, to get a five-star review. I don't feel that pressure because I feel the pressure I have to do the right thing by the child, even if the mother's not going to be happy with me. Um, and I think, and just as physicians, we think we can intervene and help. And our skill set is limited, especially when it comes to life's struggles. We're not their family. We're not their friends. We're not their faith. And we're not going to have fun with them. I mean, I
Yeah.
had fun in the office. I think the
Yeah.
kids like it. We try to make it light and fun because most kids are going to get better. Most kids as we began.
I
So
mean, it, I took my 4-year-old to the GI today and he walked right up to that nurse to room him and he goes, I'm here for the poop doctor.
yeah.
And she had a good laugh out of that. Okay, so let's go forward to gender.
Yes.
You are, it sounds like early to me saying, no, I'm not going along with this. I'm not going along with this.
No, no.
When does that, at a certain point, does that tip for you from it going from I'm not going to refer this patient on to I'm going to act, I have to do something about this?
Was there
So I think
or
that,
was there pushback at all within that system you were working in saying no, you
well,
have to do this?
I'm, this will be interesting if you have the time. I don't know what the time limit is here, but 2019, 2020, I'm teaching at the medical school and I got my practice and I'm teaching a professionalism course, which I sort of tried to model as an ethics course. And we're getting the gingerbread man, we're getting all of that stuff. And I'm supposed to be teaching this. Very uncomfortable with it. I'm talking to my partners about this, and they're sort of don't really want to talk to me. Um, and I'm talking to an endocrinologist. I get introduced to another endocrinologist. I reached out to the plastic surgeon. And at one point, I had a meeting with the head of the whole health system, the senior physician for the whole state of Florida. And he was shocked. Like I showed him, I remember printing out like three or four papers, and I printed out the graph of the Tavistock Clinic, and I purposely printed that out in color to show to him. Everything else was black and white. But he looked at that graph, he goes, whoa, anybody who would see this would stop and say, why? Not what should we do, but why is this happening?
You mean the graph of the exponential rise in trans
Yes,
identification in young
yes,
people?
yes. And he was like, that's the first question. Why? Not what should we do, but why? And I'm like, and he wanted to know what's going on in my hospital. And I said, well, I know that three of my patients have been referred for mastectomies. Um, I know that quite a few of my patients are seeing the adolescent doc and I think they're being transitioned. And he goes, "Are we doing surgeries here?" And I said, "I don't know." So he sent me on a mission to talk to the urologist, talk to the plastic surgeon, talk to the adolescent doc. And I spent like 6 hours in person and on the phone with her, talking to her. And then I got the idea of, I taught a monthly ethics seminar the last first Friday of every month. And the idea of having a detransitioner panel. And so this was December of 2001. I probably shouldn't say this. I quit my job December 1st, and the conference was like on December 5th, if I remember. So the residents had to sneak me in the back door because I'd turned my ID in. But they wanted to hear it. They wanted to hear it. The residents wanted to hear it. And Corey was there, and Grace and Helena. I think we all know Grace and Helena. Um, and it was a 90-minute seminar that lasted almost 3.5 hours. So that was 2001. And then I left the organization. And then, because I had to leave, my wife and I were in a place, but I did not want to be involved where there was more and more pressure for me to do this because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So
And was there some pressure? Were people questioning you about your views on this, or were they kind of pressuring you to like treat these kids or refer them to gender doctors?
to
Yeah.
refer, it's just easier if you just refer them because I was expressing concerns. I'm like, well, don't deal with it.
Yeah. Okay.
Just refer them and let them sort it out. I'm like, no, because I know exactly what they're going to do. I know what they're going to do.
I mean, in that case, you're very similar to Dr. Julia Mason, and that
Yes.
he was a general pediatrician and faced that same thing, which was, well, just refer them on. And then when she was realizing what was happening when she was referring them on, she felt like she couldn't continue to participate in that part either.
No. And I knew maybe from SOC 7 and the informed consent model or the patients that I was seeing in my office that there is no gatekeeping, there's no safeguarding. It's just believe the patient and do what they ask. And I'm like, this can't.
So you moved into, do you feel like you've been more participatory in helping stop this as a whole?
I like to say all I do is connect people. I have a lot of people call me, but I mean, then I don't know if I'm speaking for myself, but shortly after I left the healthcare system and trying desperately not to say their name. Um, 6 months later, I got appointed to the board of medicine here in Florida. And I was like, why did I get this phone call? I knew I got it. And that's when the death threats came and all that stuff. But then I'm proud to say that the board of medicine, we passed a rule that you cannot transition kids. And up until the ASPS statement last week or 2 weeks ago, we're the only medical organization that has expressed concerns. Now we're small peanuts, but um, if you were transitioning kids under the age of 18 with puberty blockers, hormones, or surgery, um, that would be considered a violation of our rules, a violation of the standard of care in Florida, because we as a board can make that. Um, that rule, I think, became official in March of 22, it would have been. I mean,
And Florida has done a systematic review of the
yeah, well,
evidence.
it was done after the systematic review was done. Then the timing that I got a phone call and said,
Okay.
will you be on the board?" And I'm like, "Why?" And they said, "We just think you'll be good." And I'm like, "I know where this is going." But it was necessary. It was necessary. After the board acted, our state legislature, like all the others, 27 other states have acted.
Yeah.
But the Board of Medicine here in Florida led um, from a professional standpoint. And that's what medical boards are supposed to do. We're supposed to regulate the practice of medicine on who is licensed, who gets disciplined. There's been no regulation from gender standpoint in the medical profession in the United States. In Europe, that's a different story. They had the medical authorities have stepped in and regulated it. But here in the United States, no, no.
So, I mean, as you know, our organization, we do go and we support bans, state like legislative
Yes.
bans. Do you see any other way to get this practice turned around? Like, do you see, is there a possibility that these medical boards will start to self-regulate? And do you see in the future a need for some other way to regulate these practices? Because clearly the medical boards will do whatever they want until the legislative steps in.
Um, I wrote a letter to the editor to JAMA Pediatrics in response to a paper on the Arkansas legislation. I think Arkansas was the first state
Hmm.
to have a ban. And in that letter, I said, I cited the Swedish review, I cited the Finnish review. I don't know that the CAS review had begun, but I
There
don't even
was
think the
there
interim
was an
report was
yeah,
out.
the interim report was
Yeah, but this was in
right.
December of 2020, I believe.
Yeah, no, it was not out
And
yet.
I said that, and I cited some quotes from RD trans on Reddit of kids who were harmed. They weren't listened to by their doctors. And they published a letter. And I said, if the medical profession does not self-regulate and correct itself in this area, we cannot complain when legislatures step in and do what we're not doing ourselves. That's essentially what my letter said, and that's the way it closed. So I knew that the medical profession probably wasn't going to regulate, but I don't think state laws are going to end it. They have ended it. They have protected kids, but it's going to be reputational risk and financial risk. It's going to be lawsuits. I think that's why you're seeing LA Children's, why you're seeing Kaiser, Florida, I mean, California, why you're seeing Colorado Children's. They see the reputational risk and they see the financial risk. They have the benefit of the pending HHS rule for political cover, but they're making these changes to protect themselves because they know they're being sued. They're being sued. They know the leadership knows that they've exposed themselves to too great a risk. So it's financial and reputational risk that will ultimately change this.
And you don't see right now we're in this weird quagmire where we have like half the states protecting kids from these procedures, but half the states are not. Um, Unfortunately, that's very politically divided, but
Yes.
do you like it's kind of a race to the bottom at this point? Like, do we try to push for bans in these blue states, or do we hope that like these lawsuits kind of push these medical boards and medical institutions into self-correcting? What is that? Do we trust them to self-correct? Like, what is that self-correction? What could that self-correction look like?
I mean, I don't hold hope for the AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics. I mean, they came out, what did they say in response to the ASPS statement? They said, we stand behind this.
Individualized.
Stand behind evidence-based care, and we don't think politicians should get in the way of the physician and patient. And I'm like, well, the ASPS aren't politicians.
Yeah.
They're a medical society. Okay. Um, so I think the AAP is painted itself into a corner. They've been named in lawsuits. They're being investigated. And until their reputational risk or their financial risk is so great, I don't know how they can admit
Yeah.
that this is
I've,
wrong. I mean, where's their systematic evidence review? It's
yeah.
3 years now. Okay, they, I, I'd love to be a fly on the wall inside that place and see what they're talking about. I mean, I don't know how they back out of it. I don't know how they do it. Um, it's sad. It's sad.
It is sad because, I mean, beyond just gender, it really is going to affect, and it has already affected people's trust in doctors in general.
The
I mean,
biggest, I
if,
mean, the
yeah,
whole vaccine issue, the COVID issue, I tell parents will come in and be somewhat confrontational with me about vaccines or about wanting their kid on antidepressants and stuff like that. And I'll just say to them, I said, we're talking about this A, B, and C, but really what we're talking about is trust. We're really talking about trust. And they shake their head and they said, yep, we don't. I said, we're not supposed to trust police officers. We're not supposed to trust governments. We're not supposed to trust the CDC. We're not supposed to trust schools, public libraries. When I say schools and public libraries, people know what I mean, what the schools and public libraries are displaying for the kids and the children. They know what I mean. We live in a very, very low trust society, and deservedly so. Deservedly so.
Do you,
Sadly.
with your interactions with the parents, do you come back to any sort of place of trust, or do you feel like they're at least being heard? They're heard, and so,
I mean, you can only build trust one relationship at a time. We lost it through what the AAP did. We lost it through COVID. We lost it with all the school closures. We lost it on a massive scale. It can only be rebuilt one person at a time. And I think, I hope my patients trust me. I hope they think I have their child's best interest at heart. I can be wrong. I can make a mistake. Hopefully, I'm going to admit it and recognize it when I do. Um, but it can only be rebuilt one patient at a time.
okay, random question. Um, and then we'll probably need to wrap up. How would a parent go about finding a doctor like you? I can't imagine if I Google you and how would if a parent wants their kid to see a pediatrician who's at least coming from this principle of slow caution only when your hand is forced, I almost feel like you're describing like the slow foods movement for like how to be a doctor. How can we connect with pediatricians like that for our kids?
I'm word of mouth. That's what I tell people.
You need to like start a whole movement to bring
I'm
pediatric.
too old. I'm looking to retire. Um, it just, I mean, I think patients know, they know. I mean, my profession is broke. My profession is broke in more ways than just gender. People know when they go to the doctor, they're gonna get prescribed things they don't need, things that aren't necessary, CT scans, MRIs. Um, I've had parents say, I know why they did all this in the nursery. Their child got an echo, got all this stuff because we have Medicaid and they knew they'd get paid. I've had more than one parent say that to me. And I'm like, that's terrible. The patients see it. The patients see it. And I'm not saying every echo that's done on a newborn with a heart murmur, but we were taught, I mean, we never did echoes on newborns unless we truly clinically thought they had heart disease. Now, almost every kid gets an echo. And not every kid with a murmur gets an echo before they leave the hospital. So parents see and they can tell based on what they want. But some parents want that. They truly want every referral. They want their kid with a headache to see a neurologist, an abdominal pain to see the gastroenterologist. And um, when parents demand that of me, I'm like, this is what they're going to do. This is their kid's going to end up with endoscopy. They're going to end up with a colonoscopy. Um, they're going to end up with an MRI and an EEG. They're going to do these things. And the parents are like, well, I don't want those. I just want reassurance. And I'm like, well, that's what you're going to get. That's what you're going to get. Um, and I don't think it's necessary. I'll do it if you need to. And lots of times I'll put in the referral and they don't go. They
Yeah.
don't go. They come back 3 months later and I'm like, what happened when I sent you to the cardiologist? Because she was having trouble with fainting dizziness when she stood up, which is very common in adolescent girls, vasovagal syncope. And while after talking to you, we decided not to go. And well, how's it been the last 3 months? And the teenager saying, it doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't happen anymore. Or it rarely happens. But that's got to be what the parent wants. Some parents want it all. That's our data-driven society. Not relationship driven, but data driven. You got to want to have relationships with people.
Okay, well then my solution to the end of this episode is we'll just move to the tiny town in Florida so you can take care of the kids.
Okay.
And you can't retire. How about that?
Well, 4 or 5. Well, how old did you? I shouldn't ask you that. How old your
The
youngest is?
youngest
I
is
mean,
4.
Youngest is
so
4.
see,
So
once kids hit 6, 7, they should stop coming to the doctor.
Where are they supposed to go?
Most kids after 6 or 7 don't need doctors.
They need the woods. and
They need to
letting,
go outside and play. And they
yeah.
need a doctor if they fall out of a tree or if they wreck on their skateboard, okay? But we don't allow kids to climb trees or skateboards because they might get hurt, okay? But no. But I mean, that's the other thing we used to say is after about 4 or 5 years of age, after the kids had their routine vaccines, they've had been exposed to these routine viral illnesses,
Yep.
they built up their immunity, kids back off and they get 1 or 2 colds a day and mom's comfortable taking care of them.
Yeah.
And it's the parent that brings the kid to the office with every single cold. That's the kid I need to protect. That's the kid I need to protect. So they're not in the OR getting PE tubes or in the OR getting
Yeah.
tonsillectomies and adenectomies and getting sleep studies and being made this sickly kid. Yes, those kids exist, but I can't treat every kid like that. Just like we can't treat every kid who's distressed about their sex as if they need to be transitioned. We cannot do that. That's bad medicine.
Thank you.
I don't think gender ever was good medicine.
No, I don't either.
Lauren, any other
This
pressing?
isn't what I thought we would talk about. I don't know. I don't know what we were going to talk about.
I, this was helpful for me.
It's very refreshing to have heard from a pediatrician who saw this and immediately was like, I need to ask some questions here because so many people are not asking questions. They're not even asking questions. Just like, oh yeah, I guess there's just like a bunch of kids who were somehow born in the wrong body, and absolutely, let's just give them hormones and surgery. At not without question. Doctors, pediatricians who just accepted this notion without question. So thank you for not
Well,
being one of them.
you're making me think. A lot of doctors, primary care, are trained. Belly pain, go to the gastroenterologist. Headache,
Hmm.
go to the neurologist. Chest pain, go to the pulmonologist and the cardiologist. Okay. That's not good medicine. That's not good medicine. It might generate revenue for the healthcare system, but it's not good medicine. Okay. And gender, oh my God, I'm scared. I don't blame them for sending
I know.
to the gender clinic. I don't necessarily blame them, but then it became, and I searched, when did it become political? Because this truly is a political movement. It's a quasi-religious political movement to where now I think you've got docs who still are defending it because it's their tribe
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
is, and I don't want to say the Dutch were well intentioned, but at some point it became we're saving these kids, and they weren't. They were never saving them.
Yeah. Well, the Dutch, I think, were a little, and a lot of these gender doctors too. I think they're very enamored with the visual of their own creation.
They're very enamored with themselves,
Yeah.
which is their ego, which look at what I can do.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Does it help? We're not going to measure that. That's why we have no long-term studies. And that's why we have to attack the kids who are harmed. Kick them out of the group, shun them, make them feel terrible because they'll expose what's really going on.
Right. Because the whole thing falls apart even if one person was harmed, honestly, because they're constantly harping about how most people don't regret. It's 1% detransition rate. Um, but I think we're going to see very clearly in the years to come that it's much higher than 1%.
Oh
And
yeah.
then people are really going to have to reckon with like, you know, if we've harmed all these children, like now what? Like who do parents take their kids to if they know that this is possible in our medical establishment? That's what's really scary.
It's where the trust has rightfully been
Yeah.
lost. The trust has rightfully been lost. So that's why I tell parents, this is going to get better without a doctor. Your child needs a mom more than a doctor. That's probably the most common thing I say. You're going to call me in 3 days if things aren't better. Or call, let's see you back in 2 weeks for a more complex syncopal or headache or stomach ache. But no, the trust has rightfully been lost. The trust has rightfully been lost.
Thank you so much for joining us this week for Informed Dissent. Before we wrap up, a few quick show notes. First, we had to reschedule our interview with the surgeon from the American Society of Plastic Surgeons, but we are planning still on having that conversation soon. That story is moving relatively quickly, and if you're really interested, journalist Ben Ryan has been continuing to report new details about the inner workings of this major medical society. We're going to keep tracking it. A ton of insider baseball is coming out right now, but if you're interested, Ben has the scoop. The Winter Olympics are underway, and we have 2 sports-related interviews coming up for you. We will be speaking with a writer from Outkick, a sports and culture publication that has covered the debate over sex categories in athletics extensively. This writer recently covered the woman in women's skiing who identifies as a man who hasn't undergone any medical transition. We will be speaking with him. We're also going to be speaking soon with Jennifer Say. Jen is the former Levi's executive and founder of XXXY Athletics, hero of mine. She has become one of the most visible advocates for sex-based categories in women's sports, but she has a really fascinating history. She's essentially been a whistleblower more times than I can count, and she has so much to offer and can help us understand where she thinks sports and athletics could have been going for women if we hadn't been sidetracked with boys and men trying to come into women's sports. We've long thought that sports was going to be the tip of the spear in this debate, and that continues to look like the case. As always, we want you to keep listening, keep sharing, keep commenting, like, and subscribe. If you would like an even deeper dive, we do publish a weekly newsletter for paid subscribers that goes out every Friday. That's paid subscribers for LGBTC or for Informed Dissent. It includes expanded reporting, additional sourcing, and more in-depth analysis of the week's developments. You can subscribe and receive that directly into your inbox every Friday morning. We'll see you next week. And as always, stay informed and ready to dissent. Thank you.